I got the list, Sean. Thank you.
Perfect.
Morning, Commissioner Graves. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Doing well. I was saying it's looking like a beautiful day, but I think it's going to be over 100 degrees again today on our side. How about you?
Overcast. Overcast over here in the Central Puget Sound, but a great day for talking about maps.
Great. Morning, Commissioner Walkinshaw. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you. I'm very well.
Good to see you. And good morning to everyone. I'm Sarah Augustine, the chair of the Washington State Redistricting Commission. I'd like to welcome everyone to this public outreach meeting, the 14th of this 2021 redistricting cycle. The topic of discussion today is Congressional Districts 7 and 9, and the legislative districts included within the 7th and the 9th Congressional districts. I'll have more to say about that later, but first let's kick things off with a video message from the commissioners.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Augustine. I'm the chair of the Washington State Redistricting Commission, recently chosen by the 4 voting members of the commission to facilitate and to lead this effort.
Hello, everyone. I'm Commissioner April Sims.
I'm Commissioner Joe Fain.
I'm Commissioner Brady Pinheiro-Walkinshaw.
I'm Commissioner Paul Graves. I'm one of 4 voting members recently appointed by the state legislative leadership of the Washington State Redistricting Commission.
Once a decade, we redraw our congressional and state legislative district boundaries using data the Census Bureau collected last year, reflecting changes made to the population in the last 10 years.
States across the nation handle redistricting in different ways.
In Washington, the state constitution and law establish an independent redistricting commission.
As commission members, we've committed ourselves to a process that is open,
Transparent,
and credible.
These maps will belong to all the people of Washington.
With that in mind, we encourage you to help us draw your WA.
The Commission will hold virtual public outreach meetings focused on populations residing in each of Washington's 10 congressional districts,
as well as additional outreach meetings to be scheduled soon.
Live Spanish and American Sign Language interpretations will be available for each of these meetings.
With your unique insights about the community, we will work to ensure a credible redistricting process resulting in maps reflecting fair representation for all Washingtonians.
Please take part. After all, it's really your map.
so come help us draw your WA.
Help us draw our WA.
Come help us draw your WA.
So please help us draw your WA.
Thanks, Maria. To maximize the number of opportunities for public input, this second round of public comment will be hosted by a bipartisan dyad, that is, one commissioner from each of the major parties. We adopted this strategy to ensure that residents of each congressional district would have at least 2 opportunities for public comment. All comments heard will be recorded into the official record and reviewed by all 4 of the voting commissioners. This morning, we are joined by Commissioner Graves and Commissioner Walkinshaw. From those of you from the public joining us today, welcome again. It's my goal as chair to facilitate a process that is as participatory, fair, and equitable as possible. I will endeavor to engage communities across Washington as fully as I can and to hear and address your concerns and requests. Throughout our tenure as commissioners, we will hear public comments that are important, and we will listen to you. I will do my best to synthesize the comments, and we will endeavor to respond as we are able. Still, it is possible that you will bring forward in your public comments ideas, requests, and injustices that we may not be able to address. We will certainly deliberate on the issues where we do have jurisdiction, and where we don't, I will do my best to refer you to those who may be able to respond more effectively. Let's begin by reviewing the purpose and values of the commission. Together as a commission, we've agreed to provide an open, transparent, credible process that is grounded in statute and where all voices are welcome and there's access for everyone. To conduct ourselves with transparency, respect, and civility, where commissioners will participate and negotiate in good faith, and to meet the deadline outlined by law and produce the best possible maps. You may be aware that because of the pandemic, this redistricting cycle promises to be a challenging one. While we should have received the data from the Census Bureau that we need to begin redistricting by April 1st of this year, we don't expect to have that data until mid to late August. Nonetheless, in late April, the Census Bureau did deliver to the President and the nation the apportionment data, which told us which states would gain seats in the US Congress and Electoral College and which would not. Based on that data, we know that in the last decade, the population of our state grew by 14.6% and added approximately 1 million residents. Despite that population growth, it did not change the number of congressional seats we are entitled to. Washington will continue to have 10 representatives in the US House of Representatives. Based on population growth in the state, our job as the Redistricting Commission is to distribute as equally as practical the population among 10 congressional districts and 49 legislative districts. Based on the census data from April, Washington has a population of 7,705,281 residents as of April 1st, 2020. Therefore, we need to draw 10 new congressional districts that are compact, contiguous, and convenient, and made up of approximately 770,528 residents and 49 new legislative districts that are also compact, contiguous, and convenient, and made up of approximately 157,251 residents. Statute also instructs us, in as much as it's practical, to minimize drawing district lines that cut through counties, municipalities, or communities of interest. And the Commission is committed to applying these principles while we try to create equally proportioned districts. So while we know that the overall population of the state, according to the census, We don't yet know the particulars of percentage growth across neighborhoods, towns, cities, and counties. State population estimates of the past 10 years do give us a relatively good idea of where our 7.7 million residents live and which districts will need to get larger in area to add more residents and which districts will need to get smaller in order to shed residents. And as we add or subtract neighborhoods from one district, it will cause the need to make corresponding adjustments in the neighboring districts. To show you broadly, Maria, can you put up the first map? Thank you. This map shows Washington State and its 10 congressional districts. The darker the brown colors, the more the district needs to grow in size, and the darker the teal colors, the more the district needs to shrink in size. So regarding the topic of discussion today, the 7th and the 9th congressional districts. The map indicates that the 7th congressional district, according to state population estimates, currently has more than the needed 770,000 residents to make it proportional. It will need to shed some residents. The 9th congressional district currently has slightly less residents than the needed 770,000 residents to make it proportional. Depending on the final numbers we get from the Census Bureau, it looks like this congressional district may have to absorb a few residents. Next slide, please, Maria. The 7th congressional district includes all of legislative districts 34, 36, and 43, and part of legislative districts 11, 21, 32, 33, 37, and 46. The 9th congressional district includes most of legislative districts 11, 33, 37, and 41, and parts of legislative districts 5, 27, 30, 47, and 48. Based on state population estimates, we can see that the 5th, 21st, 36th, 37th, 41st, 43rd, and 48th have more than the 157,000 residents that each district should have, meaning they will have to lose some of their residents, while the 11th, 27th, 30th, 32nd, 33rd, 46th, and 47th have less than the needed 157,000 residents and will need to find a few new residents to absorb. Thank you, Maria. So that's just a brief overview of the challenge that your Redistricting Commission faces this year. In essence, commissioners have to create a new puzzle out of the state, and the puzzle pieces have to contain nearly exactly the same population. As we make one puzzle piece smaller, its adjacent puzzle pieces will need to absorb those additional areas, meaning that every time a boundary is moved, it creates a cascade of changes in surrounding districts. So the purpose of our meeting today is to listen to your input about your community and how to ensure that the districts are fairly balanced in terms of population, but also respect shared community interests. The commission may not be able to meet every interest, but as commissioners try to weigh the trade-offs inherent in this process, your opinions are welcome and important. As of 3 p.m. yesterday, we had 60 individuals who had signed up to testify. We're going to invite individuals in groups of 4 to testify. Each individual will have 2 minutes to offer their comments. After 4 people have testified, we will see if the commissioners have any questions of those 4 testifiers, and then we will move on to the next group or panel. With that summary, John, let's begin. Please call the first panel.
Good morning, commissioners. Our first panel will begin with Ann Martin, Cindy Black, Frank Brown, and Gary Schultz. We will begin with Ann Martin. And if you're able to turn on your video, unmute yourself, and please begin your testimony.
Thank you. I'm Ann Martin, and I'm a 45-year resident of the 34th Legislative District and the 7th Congressional District. I am a retired transportation, land use, and environmental planner for Seattle and King County. On a cultural note, my mother was an immigrant from Chile in the 1940s, and I began school in Santiago in the mid-1950s. I am proud of those roots. My vision of redistricting is that the 7th CD should encompass all of Seattle and such areas north and south of the city within King County, including the 34th district, needed to accomplish population allocation and community cohesiveness. The 34th LD has some defining characteristics you should consider. First, I hope you will recognize the district's stability over the last few decades. The Duwamish River and State Route 509, as well as the topography of that area, create a well-defined eastern boundary for the district. White Center is an unincorporated area that under the Growth Management Act should be annexed into one of the adjoining cities, Seattle or Burien. This connection should be recognized in the redistricting consideration. Most importantly, the district's singular transportation connection to Vashon Island is the Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal. This connection is necessary to draw the district's heart northward, arguing that a compact district will allow all residents a stake in the district's activities. I hope this culturally and racially diverse district consisting of urban.
I'm so sorry that you ran out of time to complete your comment. We'll look forward to seeing the full comment if you're willing to submit it to us by email. Sean, if you'd call the next panelist, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next testifier will be Cindy Black. I see your video's on. If you're able to unmute yourself, please begin your testimony.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to testify today. My name is Cindy Black. I'm the Executive Director of Fixed Democracy First. We are a statewide pro-democracy organization with thousands of members across the state, including in Congressional Districts 7 and 9. I personally live in CD 7. We are also members of the Redistricting Justice for Washington Coalition, and today I'm here to focus on the 9th CD. Our organization is very interested in fair representation, especially for communities that have been historically underrepresented in the state. With that said, we think it's very important to maintain the 9th CD as a majority POC district. This would allow the POC community to elect a representative that advocates for their priorities. We recommend keeping the South Seattle and South King County BIPOC bases intact in the 9th. South Seattle as major POC community is very different from the rest of Seattle, which is predominantly white. South Seattle's issues are much more in line with those of South King County than in North Seattle. If you also consider income and socioeconomic class, most of the 9th is lower income and have very different interests than higher income places like Mercer Island and Bellevue. We recommend substituting Mercer Island, Newcastle, and Bellevue for working class diverse cities like White Center, Burien, Auburn, and the Muckleshoot Reservation. As you know, the Voting Rights Act makes it illegal to draw districts that discriminate by race. In Washington, we have the opportunity to preserve the 9th CD as a majority POC district. Refusing to do so prevents the POC communities from having a majority district to elect a representative in Washington's congressional delegation that is accountable to the interests of the communities of color. We strongly recommend the commission maintain the majority minority status of the 9th to empower communities of color and not discriminate by dividing them.
Thank you. Sure appreciate your comment. Sean, if you call the next speaker, please.
Our next speaker will be Gary Schultz. I see your video's on. If you can unmute yourself, please begin your testimony.
I'm Gary Schultz. I'm a representative of the 36th District Republicans. And I was noticing on the map that there's a jet out there called Edmonds and Mount Lake Terrace, which is in the 7th Congressional. And it looks like it'd be pretty obvious just to hack that off and put that into the 2nd district. And it looks like the 36th district is going to have to be reduced too. So it seems pretty straightforward as far, and the reason that I would take basically it's the 21st legislative district and put it into Snohomish County, it just makes sense because of the line. Otherwise, it looks like it's gerrymandered. I'm over. I'm done.
Thanks very much. We sure appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our final speaker for this panel will be Frank Brown. Frank, I see you've unmuted yourself. If you can turn your video on, if you have it, and then please begin your testimony. Frank, are you able to begin your testimony? We cannot hear you, Frank. If you can look towards the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, right next to your microphone, there should be an arrow pointing upwards. If you click that, you might be able to select a different microphone.
It looks like Frank is muted, Sean.
He was unmuted for a second, Chair. He was speaking. But yeah, he's unmuted now. Frank, can you try to say something? So Frank, we will come back to you in the next panel. I'll keep you on. And if you can try to select a different microphone by going to the bottom left-hand corner, clicking the arrow up and selecting a different microphone. And that will be the end of this panel, Chair, and I'll bring 3 more for the next one.
Thanks. So I'll just ask the commissioners at this time, if you have questions or comments for the folks on this panel. Commissioner Graves.
I do. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thanks to all of you for coming here to testify this morning. Cindy, I appreciate your comments. And this was an issue that came up in our earlier hearing on the 9th Congressional District. There was a lot of discussion about moving the 9th kind of into be a predominantly South King County district, and a lot of discussion about removing Bellevue from it, with the idea being that we want to have a majority minority district in South King County. I'd be interested to hear from you and then others who are urging that kind of map, to talk about the fact that Bellevue is a majority minority district and how that plays into the kind of map we want to draw.
Sure. As part of our coalition, we've really examined a lot of different maps and what we thought would work best. And this is why we're recommending this. In particular, we know that Bellevue does have a large community of color as well, but the income is very different. And we just wanted to make sure that we had good representation for people in South King County, especially in the 9th District, and make sure that they had good representation on the state level.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions for the folks on this panel? All right, seeing none, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us this morning. You are excused. Sean, please call the next panel.
Absolutely, Chair. Our first panelist will be Jason Morris, Karen Eggstrom, and then Marge Lofstrom, if we can begin with the first panelist, and then we will end with Frank, if he's able to get his microphone working. So Karen, if you can please turn on your video, unmute yourself, and begin your testimony.
Good morning, and thank you very much. I do not have the excellent information that was presented by the first panel at all. I'm very selfish. I'm worried about my 34th district, and that I can keep my representatives. And I live in West Seattle, and I feel more connection with Burien and White Center than I do the rest of Seattle, particularly. I can't say particularly because of the bridge, but that's how I function. So I kind of like what Anne said, was that the 7th be include all of Seattle, because I think that's important as far as our representation in Washington, and that we keep the diversity. I don't want to see the diversity go away at all. So that's pretty much what I have to say.
Thanks very much. We really appreciate you taking the time to share with us this morning. John, if you'd call the next panelist.
Absolutely, Chair. Jason Morris, I see your video's on. If you can, please unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Todd Morris. I'm a first-person self-advocate for people with developmental disabilities. I've been in Seattle for about 13 years. My sister's been here for about 20 years. We both live in the 36. I live in Magnolia. Magnolia consists of 24,000 voters, and what I would like to see of the commission is that the community of interest be held together. I think the 7th Congressional District has the 34th, 36th, 43rd, and then parts of the 11th, 21st, 32nd, 33rd, 37th, and 46th. It's important that the natural, geographic, and artificial and political subdivision boundaries be kept together. I am concerned about people of color and minorities and their voices. Also, I believe King County is thinking about a charter amendment on ranked choice voting. I have no idea how that plays in if we go to that type of voting system. Redistricting may play a part in that or not. I don't know, but that's one of the questions I have. And thank you for your service. I really appreciate the time to give testimony. I know it's the first of its kind, and I appreciate all your work. Thanks.
Thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time to share with us about your community. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. And this will be the final speaker for this panel. The previous speaker, Frank Brown, who had mic issues, has dropped off. So we will end with Marge. I see your video's on. If you can, please begin your testimony.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. I vote in the 7th Congressional District and the 34th Legislative District, and I live on Vashon Island. And like some of the other speakers, I am asking that you keep Vashon Island and at least southern King County together in the redistricting. My husband and I moved here 5 years ago to be with family. And we really enjoy the semi-residential rural area and coastal life of the island, but we're also very connected to the Seattle area. And as someone mentioned, the ferry and Fauntleroy are a big part of our life. We like to go over there. We want to maintain the inclusion with the communities for coastal reasons and communication. And we're afraid that reassigning us to a different district would break the bonds that we've been building together in the work. So I ask you again to keep Vashon together with King County and particularly Southern King County. And again, thank you for your work and for listening to me.
Thank you. We really appreciate you being here. Would you be willing to state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I did. It's Marge Lofstrom.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, I want to ask the commissioners if you have comments, questions for the folks on this panel. Okay, seeing none. Thank you, members of this panel, for being here and sharing your thoughts with us. You're excused. And John, if you'd please call them.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next panel will begin with Melissa Rubio, Melissa Taylor, Michael Ruby, and Sarah Jane Siegfried. So we will begin with Melissa Rubio. If you can turn on your video, unmute yourself, and please begin your testimony.
Hi, is it okay if I keep my video off? I don't have great service.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. Well, good morning, and thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Melissa Rubio, and I live and vote in the 7th Congressional District. I'm here today to testify in support that due to the shrink geographically in the 7th Congressional District, to recommend that we move White Center from the 7th Congressional District into the 9th Congressional District, as well as East Burien, due to, once again, ensuring that the 9th Congressional District remains a majority minority district for communities like mine. I am a Latina, and I know that in order for us to have the representation that we need in Washington, DC, that our communities have to be able to vote together. So that is, I'm not going to belabor the point. Those are the things that I support as a resident of the 7th Congressional District. And thank you so much for your work and time.
Thank you. We appreciate you being with us this morning. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Our next speaker will be Melissa Taylor. If you're able to unmute yourself, turn your video, and please begin your testimony.
Thank you. Melissa Taylor, resident of the 7th Congressional and 46th Legislative Districts. We talk a lot about communities and communities of interest in this space, and I want to emphasize how important this commission's role is in supporting, fostering, and strengthening communities. Community and society generally get stronger when we work together towards common goals, which is frequently how we engage with our congressional and state legislative officials. When communities are arbitrarily split into different jurisdictions, it makes it harder to do this important work of strengthening our communities. My primary identity that drives my civic engagement and policy advocacy is my role as a mother. I am a mom to a brilliant, compassionate, curious, and fiercely independent 12-year-old. Every action I take is towards creating a world where she and her peers can thrive as their wholly authentic selves. I want to thank Andrew Hong for his op-ed in The Stranger, advocating for a CD9 that provides communities of color who make up 30% of our population an opportunity to elect their candidate of choice in at least one of the 10 congressional districts. My CD7 will need to shift to allow for that, and I fully support it. My hope is also that this will allow CD7 to be fully in King County, again, as an opportunity to strengthen our communities' work together and our voices. I also want to advocate that where possible, you take into account both school district and county boundaries, as these are the two jurisdictional contexts where I most often see arbitrary district lines create challenges for community building. Finally, as a sexual assault survivor, I want to thank you for creating a space where I can share my thoughts without the presence of an alleged rapist. While I continue to denounce Senator Braun's appointment of Commissioner Fain and call on the commissioner to resign, I do appreciate you creating this opportunity for me to provide comment without him present. Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time, that you would take the time to be here with us this morning and for your thoughts. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Of course, Chair. Our next speaker will be Michael Ruby. I see that your video is on. If you can please begin your testimony.
My name is Michael Ruby. I reside in the 43rd Legislative District in the Wallingford neighborhood. I want to observe that as a person experienced in business, we found that our business prospered when we had a diversity of types of employees. We found that if you have to explain yourself to somebody who doesn't think exactly the way you do, we actually ended up with better results. So I want to suggest that we should think about that with respect to our congressional and legislative districts. One thing I'm concerned about is the tendency to lump all of Seattle into a single district. I think that it would be beneficial to divide Seattle in half at the Ship Canal, perhaps, because that's a good geographic water body boundary, and therefore it has nothing to do with politics. But that would also mean more of the suburban northern areas and suburban southern areas would be included with part of Seattle. so that people in Seattle would be working with people who don't think exactly the same way they do. That's an important point that I think would tend to moderate our politics. This is an increasing problem at the national level, and I'm hoping that we can accomplish that to a certain extent. I want to also think about something beyond this district, and in terms of increasing representation and the ability of people to communicate with their leaders. In terms of some of the districts in Eastern Washington, they are extremely large. I want you to consider the possibility of doing something that was done in Washington State back in the 1960s, and that is dividing some of the legislative districts in half, with one representative from each half. I suspect.
I'm so sorry that your time has elapsed. We really want to hear your full comment. If you'd be willing to submit that to us in writing via email. Thank you very much for sharing with us this morning. Appreciate your comments. And Sean, if you would call the last panelist for this panel, please.
Of course, Chair. Our final panelist will be Sarah Jane Siegfried. If you can, please begin your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Sarah Jane Siegfried. I live in Northeast Seattle in Lake City in the 46th Legislative District and 7th Congressional District. 10 years ago, the 46th Legislative District was an east-west Seattle district stretching from Elliott Bay to Lake Washington, ending at the north border of Seattle at 145th Street. For some reason, the 46th became one of the 3 most gerrymandered districts, stretching 11.5 miles north-south along Lake Washington from Portage Bay in the south, including Lake Forest Park and Kenmore, all the way to St. Edward State Park, touching Kirkland. Back in 2012, this Northeast Seattle Lake Forest Park Kenmore configuration of the 46th caused a great deal of anguish for the politically involved residents of the suburbs who had previously been in the 32nd LD with Shoreline. They constantly complained about being overshadowed by Seattle politics. This illustrates that the current long and skinny 46th district violates 3 criteria of the redistricting law. It is far from compact. It crosses major city boundaries, and it divides communities of interest. Lake City is the poorest and most diverse part of North Seattle. It has far more in common with Bitter Lake along the North Seattle border than with 2 relatively wealthy suburbs at the north end of Lake Washington, who are more aligned with Shoreline. Keep in mind that Northgate will be growing by at least 6,000 units in the near future, and that is our economic center. I ask that you restore the 46th as an east-west district wholly within Seattle, ending at 145th Street, and the 32nd wholly within the suburbs.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning and taking the time to be here on behalf of your community. At this time, I'd like to ask the commissioners if you have comments or questions for the folks on this panel. All right, seeing none, thank you again for your time and for being here, and you're excused. And Sean, if you'd please call the next panel.
Absolutely, Chair. We will begin with Frank Brown, Toyoko Tsukura, Julia Black, and Aram Falsafi. We will come back to Frank. He was the one having microphone issues earlier. So Frank, if you're able to turn on your video, unmute yourself, and please begin your testimony. And Julia, I see that your video's on and Frank has not turned on his video. So if you can please just begin your testimony.
Oh, hello. Thank you. My name is Julia Buck. I live in Congressional District 7. And I am a resident of Seattle. I am calling to encourage the redistricting committee to commit to keeping the 9th Congressional District a majority people of color area. and to rejoin or to join similar communities like South Seattle with places like Burien and White Center. I'm a volunteer with Got Green, and one of the observations that I have is that, you know, there are Superfund sites in South Seattle. There are none in North Seattle, and there are none sort of on the Western corridor. My observation from having worked in Bellevue for 5 years is that Bellevue has some of the similar problems to the city of Seattle or North Seattle, insofar as, you know, rapidly accelerating cost of living that need to be addressed. But issues like, you know, environmental racism or being used as an environmental sacrifice zone is consistent across South Seattle and South King County. And so I would encourage the district, you know, or I would encourage the redistricting committee to take that into consideration in terms of representation, because, you know, representatives, federal representatives are designed to solve problems for communities, and it is easier to do that when communities are facing the same sort of problems and situations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time and your presence with us this morning. John, if you could call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Frank, I see your video's on. If you can please begin your testimony. Frank, we can still not hear you. I believe that you have the wrong microphone selected. So whatever input you have selected as your microphone within Zoom is not being picked up. I'll come back to you in just a second, but how to select that again, if you go right next to your microphone in the bottom left-hand corner, there should be an arrow pointing up. It will bring up a menu of different microphones and speakers that you can select from. So if you're able to pick a microphone, it will actually be able to hear you with. There's also a way to test your microphone in that little section. So with that being said, Aram, I see your video's on. If we can please have you unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Hi, good morning, and thank you, commissioners, for taking input from the community. My name is Aram Falsafi. I live in Columbia City, Southeast Seattle, 9th Congressional District and 37th LD. I want to echo some of the other comments about the importance of preserving communities of interest together. It is about preserving the majority people of color composition of the 9th Congressional District, but it goes a little bit beyond that because there is also an element of income level and class, to be honest, here, which is that while it's true that Bellevue might have a large people of color population, their issues, their lifestyles, their professions are very different than South King County. So centering the 9th around South King County and South Seattle is very important to me. It meets two of the goals of the Redistricting Commission, which is preserving communities of interest together and amplifying the voices of minorities. I also want to strongly speak against this idea of making one district for all of Seattle. If you notice, that has not been brought up by anybody who actually lives in South Seattle, because we don't feel particularly connected to North Seattle. In some ways we are, politically maybe we are, but in other ways that is not a good combination in my opinion. So I want to speak out against that. And finally, I want to shout out Redistricting Justice for Washington and the great proposed maps they've created, including one for the 9th. And a website called preserveour9th.org with number 9, where we have a petition to maintain the majority BIPOC status of the 9th, and it has many community members and organizations.
Thank you. I'm sorry that you've exceeded your time, and if you would please send us your written comment, we'd love to receive that as well. And thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts with us this morning. John, if you would call the next speaker, please.
Of course, Chair Toyoko, I see your video is on. If you can unmute yourself and please begin your testimony.
Thank you for allowing me to testify. My name is Toyoko Tsukura, and I reside in Legislative District 43 and the Congressional District 7. I moved to the University District in Seattle from the Tri-City in 2018. Currently, University of Washington Seattle campus has a student population of 48,000. The majority of the students live near or vicinity of the Seattle campus. The current LD 43 encompasses the region where high density of students live. It is important to keep this core area intact, maintain cohesion of the student voice as it is now. They need a strong collective voice to address issues such as affordable and safe housing, public transportation, and safe bike lanes. If the district needs to change the current boundary due to the census result, please continue to keep the student core area together from the Ship Canal North to 65th Street and between the First Avenue Northeast on the west to 26th Avenue Northeast on the east within any new district boundary. Thank you, commissioners, for your dedication to this very difficult task. Thank you so much again.
Thank you very much for choosing to be here with us this morning and for sharing your comments with us. We appreciate that. Sean, if you'd call the last panelist, please.
Absolutely, Chair. We are going to go back to Frank Brown if you are able to begin your testimony now. Frank, we're still not able to hear you, sadly. Frank, I would definitely encourage you, if you're able to write in your testimony. I will come back to you at the end of the meeting. But if that, again, does not work, to please submit your testimony in either recorded form and send it to our email, or write something down in an email and send it to us. But I will definitely come back to you at the end of the meeting to make sure that you're able to try one more time.
Thank you. We appreciate your presence here. And I'm so sorry, Mr. Brown. I know how frustrating it can be to try and figure this out. So at this time, I want to ask if the commissioners have questions or comments for the folks on this panel. Okay, seeing none, thank you again for your time. You're excused. And Sean, if you'd call the next panel. Thank you.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next panelist will begin with Bryan Kesterson, Heron, Dan Sandsen, and then Ed Prince. We will begin with Bryan. Bryan, if you're able to turn on your video, unmute yourself, and please begin your testimony.
Unmute. There we go. Now you should have both my video and my audio. Yeah, I'm Bryan Kesterson. I live in the 47th Legislative District and the 9th Congressional District. I want to thank the commissioners for their work. I've always thought that that Washington has a model for how redistricting should be done. Quickly, I have two comments to make. I think that the 47th currently is a fairly evenly divided district politically. It's a moderate district. I would like to see it remain that way. And I think that the 9th Congressional District, I would like to see Seattle taken wholly within the 7th Congressional District. We tend in the South End to get overwhelmed by Seattle politics. So I would prefer to see the 9th Congressional focused on the south end and the east side. I am sensitive to the issues that have been brought up about remaining a majority minority district. From my understanding of the demographics of Bellevue and the east side, it should remain that way, even if this change is taken. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you very much for sharing your point of view with us this morning. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely. Dan, I see your video is on. If you can please unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Hi, my name is Dan Sandsen. I live in SeaTac, Washington, and reside in the 9th Congressional District. I'm interested in maintaining the majority BIPOC alignment. I don't know, the composition of the 9th Congressional District, and wonder if that the way that the 7th and 9th sort of split South Seattle, if we could, the 9th could cover more of Burien and give a little bit of Seattle back to Seattle. I know that there's been some talk of trying to contain the 7th wholly in Seattle. I'm not so sure that that's the greatest idea either. But again, I don't envy the commission in the challenge that they're facing. I'm mainly focused on South King County. I want to make sure that the South King County cities maintain the following contiguous boundaries within the congressional district is of my interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time, and thanks for giving part of your Saturday this morning. Sean, if you'd call the next testifier, please.
Of course, Chair. Our next testifier will be Casa. I see your video is on. If you can please begin your testimony.
Hello, my name is Casa Hannon. I live in Renton and vote in Legislative District 41 and Congressional District 9. I work in technology and volunteer my time with the League of Women Voters, Seattle Arcs Foundation, WSU Foundation, and Team Gleason. I have 3 requests. First, the 9th Congressional District is majority minority today, and I would also like to see it stay that way. I advocate for the northern part of the 9th to be bounded by I-90, excluding Bellevue and Mercer Island, and expanding the 9th CD South to include the Muckleshoot Reservation. I also want a district that is focused on balancing low to moderate incomes and excluding the high income extremes. Second, I'd like to add my voice to those requesting that native lands be encompassed within single legislative and congressional districts. Districts that encompass a tribal nation increase the voting power of these residents, where it is diminished today for tribes like the Yakima and Colville nations. When tribal lands are divided, anyone interested in public service loses many of their supporters as voters in another district. Care should be taken to include as many tribal members as possible who live off those lands in the same district as the reservation. I'm a white, non-native person. This clear preservation of communities of interest is one of the priorities. I know that others in my community feel the same as I do, and I don't want this to be overlooked as a minority view. Third, I ask the commissioners to consider maps that will be submitted by the League of Women Voters Washington. We have hosted regional and statewide listening sessions, engaging with people who may be too intimidated to testify before the commission. Our goal is to understand communities of interest, areas of shared economic, environmental, and transportation needs, and opportunities for majority BIPOC districts, balancing input to submit statewide maps to you. The nonpartisan process has been robust and inclusive. I recognize that you balance many interests. Thank you for considering my input.
Thank you. We really appreciate your taking the time and your leadership on behalf of your community and being here today with us. Sean, if you would call the final panelist for this panel, please.
Of course, Chair. Our final panelist will be Ed. I see your videos on. If you can please unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Good morning to all of you. I am Ed Prince, a City Council member from Renton, and also privileged to serve on the Sound Transit Board of Directors, co-chair of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority Governing Committee, and as president of the Sound Cities Association. I'm here this morning on behalf of the City of Renton to reinforce our request that we've made that you place our city in a more compact number of state legislative districts when you redraw your congressional and legislative district boundaries. Renton is currently in a situation where we enjoy working with all of our legislators, but there are a lot of them. The city is in 5 legislative districts right now, 6 if you account for the Renton area precincts in the 47th district. This results in a city of 106,000 that plays an important roles as a employment center, transportation crossroads, and a center of diversity and culture, being a small sprinkling of several districts rather than an important component of a few. We've previously submitted to the commission a table showing that among cities of a population of 80 to 150,000, no other jurisdiction lies in more than 3 districts, which we think is a much closer representation of RCW 44.5.0901A, which says that the number of counties and municipalities divided among more than 1 district should be as small as possible. And thinking about the city of Renton and where we believe our jurisdiction best fits for future legislative districts, we believe Renton should continue to be a dominant part of the 11th district. We also see Renton having an important relationship to other 405 corridor communities, which is why we ask that the city remain in the 41st legislative district. And preferred option 2 district map we just submitted, Renton would be entirely within the 11th and 41st. That said, south of the Cedar River, Renton also shares many characteristics with South County cities such as Kent. So
I'm sorry, Mr. Prince, you've exceeded your time, but we look forward to hearing your full testimony if you would submit it in writing. Sounds like you've already submitted a map to us and a table. Thank you for that. We really appreciate it. And gosh, you are really involved in your community, and thank you for taking the time to be with us. I know you have many demands in time. Thank you for being here and sharing with us. So at this time, I'd like to ask the commissioners if you have questions or comments for folks on this panel, beginning with Commissioner Graves.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. And thanks to everybody again for coming out and testifying. Councilman, I want to say a special thanks to you from testifying from Renton. We've heard from your mayor as well, and it sounds like the city council is pretty well aligned on the notion that 5 or perhaps 6 legislative districts is a lot. So I've really been grateful for it sounds like a lot of unanimity from the city council itself and for the help with trying to draw potential maps. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Commissioner Walkinshaw.
I just wanted to echo my colleague Paul's comments. Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, and for your leadership too in the African American Commission over the years. I think this is these are really good points, and I think these questions about how many districts are comprised within different cities the size of a place like Renton will be really important as we're deliberating into the next 6, 7, 8 weeks, 2 months. So thank you for raising those points.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no additional questions or comments, I would like to thank again the members of this panel. Thank you for being with us and for spending this time with us this morning on Saturday. We appreciate you. You're now excused. And Sean, if you'd call the next panel, please.
Of course, Chair. Our next panel will begin with Dia Lale, William Hochberg, Julie Sarkeesian, and our final panelist will be Samya Timpathy. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. William, I see your video is on. If we can begin with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners. I'm Bill Hochberg, a longtime resident of the 41st. And in fact, I've been in the district for so long. It was the 7th, then the 8th, and now the 9th. Professionally, I am a trial lawyer representing injured persons. As long as I can remember, the East Side has been a congressional district by itself, and I think it should remain that way, either as the 7th, 8th, or 9th over the years, and remain now as the 9th. Seattle is much better as its own district, as its interests are substantially different than East Side and South County districts. The 9th district currently is very diverse, and I strongly suspect that based upon census data that you will have shortly, it will remain a minority majority district, even without parts of Seattle. As someone who gets out in the community quite a bit in a variety of ways, literally knocking on doors, I can tell you that from my apocryphal experience, that is going to remain to be true. I think the bottom line is is we don't want, and my apologies to any Seattle resident commissioners who may be on the Zoom this morning. Frankly, having the Seattle tail wag the 9th Congressional District dog doesn't seem appropriate. So we would ask that the East Side and South County remain as one congressional district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time and presence here with us this morning. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. The next speaker will be Shamia. If you can, please begin your testimony. And two of our other testifiers who were supposed to be on this panel have dropped off. So in the meantime, I will also be calling up our final testifier. So this will be the final two testifiers. So this will be the last panel. Julie Sarkeesian, I'm going to try to bring her back up. And then Dorothy, I'm going to mispronounce your last name. I'm sorry. And I'm just going to bring these last two panelists up. But please begin.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Soumya Tripathi, and I'm a resident and voter in District 7. I'm also here today as the Director of Policy and Civic Engagement at Asian Counseling and Referral Service, a King County service provider serving Asian and Pacific Islander immigrants and refugees across the 7th and 9th District. As an agency serving communities of color who have been historically excluded from culturally meaningful services and resources, we have a responsibility to be here today to advocate for a redistricting process that serves marginalized clients and community members. On behalf of ACRS, we're asking that the Redistricting Commission strongly consider preserving and maintaining the 9th District as a majority POC district, as we've heard many times today, and keeping it as a district where people of color are the majority because it allows residents of the 9th to get the representation and political power they deserve. And as the 7th District faces disproportionate population growth and the district lines are redrawn, we would propose that White Center and East Burien be added to the 9th District and that South Seattle and South King County stay part of the 9th District. Additionally, as we know, maintaining the majority minority status of the 9th to empower people of color, not discriminate by dividing communities of color, is in line with our Voting Rights Act. When district lines are drawn unfairly, our communities suffer, and this past year we saw undocumented immigrants be left out of COVID relief time and time again. Our clients and community members need to be able to elect politicians that will advocate relentlessly for their rights and needs. Thank you so much for your consideration, and I hope that you'll take our concern very sincerely. Thanks.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time and your thoughts this morning. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our last speaker for this meeting will be Drisai Pisapulity. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. If you can please unmute yourself, turn on your video, and begin your testimony. If you are able to unmute yourself, and please begin your testimony. Chair, I am getting no response, and that is the last individual who signed up to testify who have not gotten to yet.
Thank you, Sean. So if you're in the room and you plan to testify today, we would like to hear from you if you're able to unmute yourself and turn your video on. Anyone in the room at this time would be willing to do that, then we'll call on you and listen to your comments.
I'm sorry, I think I must have signed up for the wrong thing. I don't think I was supposed to testify.
Okay, sure. Thank you for listening anyway, no problem. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to share with us today? All right, well, at this point, what I'd like to do is ask the commissioners if you have comments or questions for the two folks who are on this panel this morning. All right, seeing none, I want to thank you again for speaking and for sharing your time with us. It's so important that you're here. This is an important exercise for all of us to work together to create meaningful and fair maps. And so at this time, you're excused, and I would like to ask the commissioners if you'd like to make concluding. Okay, Commissioner Watkins, please go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Augustine. I'll just wanted to thank everyone for spending a little bit of their time on a Saturday morning on this very important activity for our democracy. So wishing you all the best of the day, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Commissioner Graves, would you like to make some concluding remarks? Please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to say a special note of thanks to everybody who showed up today on a Saturday to talk about your maps and what they might look like. I was especially heartened to hear testifiers talk about the way our commission works and the fact that we have an independent bipartisan commission. And I really do think it should serve as a model for the nation. And I hope that everybody on here knows, especially those who got cut off a little bit because of our time limits, that you can email in as well. And we read all those comments as well. We really want to get as much public input about what your communities look like and what's important to you so that we can draw maps that fairly reflect the people of Washington. So thanks very, very much for showing up.
Thank you, Commissioner Graves. And at this time, we'll call the meeting to a close. I would like to thank Washington State Redistricting Commission staff, including caucus staff, for all that you've done to help us to prepare for these meetings. I would like to thank the folks that are here providing interpretation services this morning for American Sign Language, Spanish language interpretation. Thank you for being here and helping us to fulfill our mandate. I would also like to thank the court reporter who is here to ensure that we have an accurate record. And I would like to thank the commissioners for your time, your commitment, your constant willingness to consider the input from people around the state. I appreciate you. And finally, I'd like to thank people from the public who've chosen to be with us today. Thank you, whether you testified or were just here listening and bringing this back to your community. This is what is required for all of us to benefit from democracy. And we appreciate your presence. And I'm thankful to be in community with you. This meeting